Hello, Furidashi listeners. I just wanted to take a moment before we get into today's absolutely amazing episode on Death Stranding 2 on the beach to let you all know that I am going to make a probably failed attempt at streaming this Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. You can figure out how that works for you. I'm not going to do it. You do the calculations. If you have any questions about this month's episode, or if you have questions about things that we didn't discuss, but you still want to hear my thoughts on, I will be holding office hours. Again, that's from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time on Friday. And so with that... Oh yeah, I should probably tell you where to go. So it's going to be on YouTube. It's just Furidashi. If you just search for Furidashi podcast, it should come up. All right. With that, on with the show. Hello, everyone. It is my unfortunate duty to announce to you that this is the final episode of the Furidashi podcast. I know. Last time I said that it was the final episode, but this time it really is the final episode of all time until next month. And this time around, with my dear friend Lauren, we will be discussing a Hideo Kojima production, Death Stranding 2, on the beach. Lauren, please introduce yourself to the fine individuals out there in... Why am I doing this weird AI voice? Hello, Lauren.
I love your weird AI voice because we just basically had weird AI voice for Death Stranding 2 on the beach.
Yeah.
I am Lauren Ash. I did not write, nor direct, nor produced, nor executive produced, nor developed this production.
Nor were you the CEO of the studio that oversaw.
Or the face of the company. And for all intents and purposes, I am but just a humble player that really, really, truly, deeply loved actually playing Death Stranding 2 on the beach. It was a fantastic game experience. And what Nicholas and I have found is that it wasn't always, say, a fantastic narrative one. And you know us by now, that we usually kind of say they aren't interchangeable. But I think in this case, what, as Kojima does and is wanted to do, continuously surprises us, surprises himself, surprises everybody with what he's going to do. And I'm sure in another 4 years, we'll get Death Stranding 3 on a second beach.
No, it's not going to be on the beach. It's going to be on the coast.
On the coast?
Because he's going to
remix
remix
off the shore.
He's going to take the meme and he's going to remix it.
Yeah, I don't know. As a player, I would be really excited to see that. So thank you everybody for joining us on the Furidashi podcast today. I am your co-host, Lauren Ash, here with my also very dear friend, Nicholas Tyson. And as we discuss kind of Death Stranding 2, Metal Gear Solid 7000,
well, it would be Metal Gear Solid 7, Death Stranding 2.
Yeah, no, Metal Gear Solid 7000. Yeah, I don't understand.
It's like I said that, dumbass.
Yeah, you know? And once we get to Metal Gear Solid 9, it's going to be great. I do think that what's really exciting, guys, to remind you, is that while we are talking about Death Stranding 2, this month was really important for Nicholas and I because it is August. And like we mentioned a couple of months ago or a couple episodes back, we now get to then once again play more Metal Gear Solid.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. It never ends. Seriously, guys, It never ends.
It never ends. It really doesn't.
It really doesn't. And so for this episode, what we're going to be talking about is kind of a whole great recap of kind of like this Metal Gear, or at least Death Stranding, Metal Gear Solid, 2 on the beach. No, wait, Death Stranding 2, on the beach. There we go.
Yeah.
And talking about a tale of two gameplay experiences.
Yes.
I think that it's really interesting because, as you remember from the last episode, Nicholas didn't have online functionality.
Nope.
But you did this time, Nicholas. So
Yes,
why don't
I
we
did.
go ahead and start with that? You finally had what I would consider one of the best aspects of the game / franchise.
If for some reason you're not willing to go back and listen to last month's free episode, and you really should, a quick recap. I had a miserable experience playing Death Stranding 1, due in no small part to the fact that, like, a lot of the things I just got incredibly frustrated with, especially the vehicles, because I had to build all of the infrastructure myself. And so if, like, I wanted anything to support me as I, like, went along, I had to do all of the work for it. And so I eventually just got to the point where, and this is something that I talked about, where I kind of thought of Sam himself as something that I could, like, build out as, like, a completely independent thing. So I focused on all of the items that made, like, Sam himself more functional in the field, like all of the exoskeletons and things like that. And I just said, fuck the vehicles. Like, I'm not dealing with this shit. Also, in part because the controls on PC for the vehicles are kind of janky. And that's also true of Death Stranding 2, but I do think the vehicles are better there. And so I found myself in this situation where, Lauren, I think it was your partner who actually kind of described my experience as, like, the true
Yes.
Death Stranding experience.
So
and part of the reason for that is because that sense of being, like, the loner who is, like, out on his own and has to do everything himself, that is actually the one supported by the narrative, by the story. Like, that is the Sam that is described in the cutscenes. He is the vanguard. He is the one who's going out and establishing, like, the most forward point of the chiral network.
Right, and it's also something that fights, and I think in Death Stranding, the first one, that's in Death Stranding. What was really great about the last episode, to recap, is that we also talked about how Norman Reedus' character, Sam, fights against what actually kind of the gameplay, that online connectivity, and kind of the fabric of, no, the whole point of you being the vanguard is to connect people, Sam. Don't you realize how connected you are? And those types of tensions, right? I think the best themes are themes that have kind of the ones that are something versus something else. And in that, it was really connection versus isolation, right? It's about having to be the loner because that's what brings people together. And I think that it was that tension and that fighting that really made the narrative and the gameplay kind of sing harmoniously in the first Death Stranding. But Nicholas didn't have that online connectivity, and so obviously he was getting only one of the thematic elements. But it was more supported, I think, narratively, to your point, Nicholas. And so it kind of all created this wibbly wobbly, mushy, amazing America doesn't have trees. And now I see why, because I hate the trees in Death Stranding 2. But continue,
also
Nicholas.
because it made me feel, because of the fact that, like, what I was experiencing through gameplay matched what the narrative was saying, it made me feel like that was what I was supposed to experience. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be miserable this entire time? It's supposed to feel like a fucking struggle, like a slog every time I try to do something? Is that the intention? And as it turns out, maybe not. Because once I did finally get around to... So I just couldn't figure out how to get, like, the online thing to work with Death Stranding 1. But I did figure out how to make it... I finally found the settings in Death Stranding 2, and I got the full online experience. And so I was finally able to see what Lauren was talking about. That sense of, like... I mean, I don't want to be too sappy about this, but you do genuinely feel connected to other people playing the game. Like, that is actually... So, just for those of you who don't know, like, basically, the way the online functionality works is that you don't necessarily, like, communicate directly with any other players who are, like, working as porters, or, like, their version of Sam. The way you encounter other individuals is through the traces they leave on the landscape, through the things that they build, through, like, the waypoints that they create, and also not only that, but also through the requests they make, through, like, the various signs that they post. So it's not just like, oh, I can recharge my vehicle here because someone has already built the tier 3 like generator. But also at the same time, now that I'm here, I can see that somebody has left a note that they want, say, like, weapons and certain supply and weapons and tools at this particular location. Well, I'm not going to use all of the resources that are available here. So I'm just going to go in, I'm going to make a bunch of tools and weapons, and I'm going to leave them there, and I'm going to pay it forward. Or I'm going to entrust things that I found along the way, because the sticky gun on the vehicle is chef's kiss. It is perfect. Like, that is the way the sticky gun should have worked in the first game.
Yes, the sticky gun is my favorite. I love the vehicle upgrades, of course. Now, as you know from the last episode, my partner and I absolutely used our cute little Tonka trunk throughout the wilderness. I mean, the entire American apocalyptic wasteland for me felt like when I was a kid and I had my little train engine diorama. I was one of those kids.
Yeah.
And I'm playing with the little model train. You take it off the tracks and you're going through the forest and you're like, ha 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 ha. And all the people are screaming. Yeah. And you're just like, I'm off the rails. That totally says everything about how I grew up, I guess.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. But no, that's what it felt like. We're playing with our Tonka truck and we're just going through the wilderness. And then we get to Australia and yeah, the vehicle features are way better. The maneuverability is great. The jump feature actually works. Yeah. But man,
you don't get stuck on like the tiniest little pebble that just happens to be.
You don't get stuck on pebbles. You can say go down a waterfall and everything's okay because I just did that today, as I was kind of playing the game to refresh my memory and myself. And I think that it's just so important to have good vehicle functionality. But what I was going to say is, man, America didn't have trees. And good riddance, because driving with trees, man, that's how I damaged like my cargo. Is that I was getting through something narrow and I hit the trees. And I was like, this is why they didn't have trees in the first game. Like, I should be able to path through these trees. Come on. I was so mad.
Well, they didn't have trees in the game, but they did have random rocks.
Out of all of the places, Western Australia has random trees. Like, what happened in the Stranding? Like, that's what I want to know. Western Australia's got rain and trees.
We talked about this with Death Stranding 1, where like that's not actually the geography of North America.
True. It's true.
I mean, because it's literally based on Iceland. Like, that was the actual like source photography that they used for most of it, and like the way in which like, it becomes mountainous very close to the shore. That also felt very reminiscent of like parts of Japan. And then like the Australia that we get also only kinda resembles Australia in certain aspects, but like it's also not really Australia. It's Australia because everybody talks with an accent, with an Australian accent. But outside of that, it's not, I don't know. Maybe our Australian listeners can chime in and tell us, like, no, actually, it's perfect. That's exactly what Australia is like. Okay, well, one way in which it genuinely is like Australia is that the spiders are fucking dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because Australia, for those of you who don't know, Australia has, like, very, very nasty spiders. And the like, spider equivalent, because they're actually, like, chiral creatures, in Death Stranding 2 are just as fucking annoying and difficult to deal with. So yeah. that is very Australian. I will give them that. But so to talk about like, actually let's focus on the vehicles. The vehicles are sort of, I don't necessarily know if we're going to talk too much about the story. I really kind of want to focus on the gameplay because I think that's really what shines in this game.
Yeah, and I think the big reason why we're kind of talking about the vehicles, we're talking about the trees, the geography, and we're talking about all of this is because it seems that for all of its disparate pieces, Death Stranding 2 is providing a really good holistic gameplay experience.
Yes.
And when Nicholas says he's not sure he wants to talk about the story, there's two reasons. And the main reason is because Lauren has not finished the story and refuses for Nicholas to spoil it. So congratulations, every listener who hasn't also finished Death Stranding 2, because you're still delivering packages to the animal shelter and collecting all of the wildlife because you found what you want to do. Yeah. I support you. I salute you. And
I not only support you, I think you have made the right choice. You are having the ideal gameplay experience by avoiding
I am having
the story.
I am having the ideal gameplay experience. But also you really do want to experience that story and that narrative. We really won't be spoiling anything for you guys here. On today's episode of Furudashi Podcast. I say today, but I mean this month's. And I think a big part of it is because the story, for me, I'm actually really invested into it, and so I'm very excited by it. So I'm the main reason. You guys can blame me for us not really getting into it. But also because for me, I think that the gameplay is just really phenomenal. It's going to take the whole episode. Like, there's just a lot of fun stuff. And it does fight a little bit with the narrative experience at times.
Well, let's talk about that, because I want to actually quote something that you said a long time ago, which is that gameplay itself, I mean, I think you were talking specifically about combat mechanics at the time, but you said that gameplay itself has a narrative. It is structured like a narrative. So really what we're talking about is two narratives. We're talking a narrative that you experience through gameplay, and then you have a narrative that you experience primarily through, say, like dialogue and like the various cutscenes in the game. Or like, you know, basically everything that happens on the ship. What is it? The Magellan? Yeah. So like there is that story, but then there's also the story of like who you are in the world that you experience primarily through the interactive elements of the game. And I think we would agree that those two things they're not saying the same thing. Now, you can take that several different ways. You can take the fact that they're not saying the same thing as like, okay, well, is this like an ironic relationship between these two things? Is it like actually trying to get you to think about the fact that, you know, on the one hand, the story is presenting to you one idea of Sam in this world, and then the gameplay is presenting to you another idea, and then you have to sort of like dialectically work out between the two of them a synthesis of those like disparate ideas. I would actually argue no, but I could be convinced of that reading even if like the dialectic is more accidental than, say, intended, because I don't actually think that it's intended.
And I think this is where we do disagree, is that I would say I think the dialectical is in some ways very intentional. I think that there is something to be said for how the best game designs are birthed from accident. And that you're going, can I make these two disparate experiences mesh? And then in doing so and realizing they do mesh, and so the gameplay is then kind of like put higher, you're realizing that the game itself is now making an argument.
Yeah.
But if you weren't intentional in the first place with those choices, I don't think you would even get to the dialectical stage where you can say, now we have a reading. I think it is a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation is the only thing, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what came first? I really want this, but it's actually a happy accident. If it's an accident, you didn't really want it. But if you didn't make the choices to make the happy accident, then would you have gotten the happy accident? And so I think that for me, it's a bit of a recursive loop, but I'm really glad we're bringing it up because the game itself, in the context of Death Stranding 2, for me and for where I'm at in the story, and Nicholas knows where I'm at in the story at least, it almost seems to be lost a little. And that the game, that's why I'm stuck. I'm stuck, you could say, in the story doing the gameplay stuff, but I'm not really stuck. I'm just having a great time.
Well, because there's also a way in which, because it's not just that like they don't match in terms of what they're saying about Sam as a person. Because, you know, and Lauren talked about this previously in the episode, where it's like, on the one hand, like you have the story presenting Sam as like, you know, the Vanguard loner, but then like the experience that the player has of Sam is this person who's like deeply connected to other players and like the things going on in the world. The problem I have with that is, and I want to use the example of Tarman. So Tarman here, hey Sam, it's Tarman. Yeah, I know. I can see you. There's a holographic projection of you. Hey, Tarman here. Yeah, I know. No, Tarman. Hey, it's Tarman. Anyway, so Tarman, who is the captain of the Magellan, or at least he's the guy who actually drives the thing because he has a chiral hand that's out in the chiral currents somewhere. Don't think about it too long. It's just don't think about it. Just accept it as it is. So at one point in the story, in a cutscene, well, it's not even a cutscene. It's when you were in your room, you can notice that there is a copy of Moby Dick that is like sitting at the head of your bed. And if you click on it and you inspect it and you like, oh, what's this? You will discover a photograph of Tarman and his son, but you don't know that it's his son at that point. You just see Tarman and another guy. So you take the photo up to the bridge and you hand it to him, and then you have this reminiscent episode where there's a cutscene that shows how, like, why what Tarman was doing with the Magellan in the first place, and his son was working with him, and the tragic accident that occurred, that like his son then gets lost in the chiral currents and he is unable to recover him. That's also how he lost his hand. And the thing is, that entire scene is supposed to be this like revelation of Tarman's like, well, I don't know what it's supposed to reveal about him, because it kind of didn't reveal anything to me. Like, I didn't feel anything when that happened. And there's this moment in the cutscene when Tarman is standing at the edge of the Magellan and he's looking out over the side, kind of like, well, that happened. and I'm like, what? It's very strange that like it's so emotionally muted, and then when you come back to Sam and Tarman on the bridge, it's like, yep, that sucked. And I'm like, what is the point of this? So to me, it's like, if you're going to make an argument about sort of like this this very, very intricate, subtle relationship between this tension between the narrative of gameplay and the narrative of like the cutscenes and dialogue, you have to come to grips with the fact that so often the cutscenes and dialogue are just, they're not terribly subtle or nuanced. They're not really conveying that level of like thoughtfulness, at least to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to, I think, the technicalities of things as well. And I think that we'll probably we kind of discussed a lot of what we wanted to discuss today. And in today's Patreon episode, which we highly recommend, we're realizing that we're going to be doing a lot more of that kind of behind the scenes outtakes that you know and love. But just doing that a little bit more forward, because we think our best Patreon episodes are the ones where we're kind of unfiltered. So kind of hop over there for more of the unfiltered discussion around kind of like topics of like the gameplay, the cutscenes, and how kind of nuance isn't always kind of technically feasible within the cutscene moments.
Yeah. But this is also a problem that maybe my problem is that I'm always reading Kojima's games onto each other. Because it's like,
yes,
I have not yet seen him be capable of handling the emotional resonance of the relationship between characters with the degree of subtlety that I think the reading that you prefer, Lauren, would actually require. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that. I can get behind that. I think that the big thing that, like, for me, that's really important to recognize is that when you have a lot of intentionality going into games like this, particularly not just, right, the director, it's also, like, the animators that are responsible for it, right? That I think that...
Yeah.
And the actors themselves. Obviously, yes, there's kind of writing that's involved, but the writing is just one very, very specific part of it. And when I saw kind of Moby Dick and I saw that kind of, and like, which I guess we should have mentioned is a spoiler technically if you haven't done the book, but if you have Dollman in the room, which we can talk about him as well, is that it's very easily like, you should read the book. And the first time you read it, you're not actually reading Moby Dick, you're reading the picture and it says go to Tarman. And I think that it's one of those moments where the arguments fight themselves again. You have a character named Tarman, so he's really easy to understand, but he's also kind of dealing with grief. And this is something that I wanted to lade a little bit more into after we've talked about some more of the gameplay elements. But I think a lot of the narrative and the story's like centrality is focusing around things that you've lost.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, it feels like a kind of addendum / narrative that is attached to the lost packages that you find. throughout the world, and you always
Yeah.
had lost cargo, but now we're looking at grief in terms of actual human loss. And I think that's where, whenever you have a subject like grief, it's not something that's been experienced before, that we've seen, say, from a Metal Gear Solid title. Like, grief has always been there, but it feels like it's never been dealt with in a very straightforward way. And so before we get onto the topic of tone, right, let's talk about kind of some of the gameplay moments that we actually really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because we can just, like, I'm bringing it back to Lost Cargo because I'm bringing it back to the sticky gun because I'm bringing it back to vehicles. Like, I'm just kind of like looping it back in there because I think that we need to really focus on how you actually play the game.
I can talk about the feel of the game, especially through like the lens of the vehicle. So like one of the major improvements that I found with the truck is that it's fucking covered. And so like you can actually use it to, so the way I ended up using the truck is basically as a kind of like mobile base of operations, where like I had a huge variety of things just like available to me at any given time. And so like I then approach an area where I need to like perform whatever the mission happens to be. Like, let's say it's dealing with like bandits or like trying to get through an area that's infested with BTs. Like I can then go to the stuff that I'm carrying around in my truck and I can find the appropriate equipment for doing that. And you can also then like you have a far greater degree of customization with the vehicles. Like you could just have much more like battery life, so you can use them over like far larger extended periods, like longer stretches. And as a result, then it's the way I experienced the environment was then like I actually felt that sense of being sort of like the Pathfinder or the Vanguard, because it's like I have the stuff with me, and then you arrive at a particular location, you lay down stakes. And one of the things that I like about the way the online play is structured is that when you first go to a site, like say to a new like location that you want to connect to the chiral network, there's nothing there. And then once you actually do get there and you connect it, that's when all of the stuff that other people have built up appears. So you do have that sense of like, okay, now I not only have I connected these people, like in terms of like the story of the game to the network, I have now also connected myself.
Yes.
To everything that's going on.
And that's such a big theme from the first game that I was like, oh my God, this does it so well. And because you connected people to the chiral network, but you literally had no one around you, you like never got that feeling. So I'm just really glad that you got that theme of connection kind of in spite of your own characters, like / avatars need to connect. Right?
Yeah.
Now that's the first one. I would say in this one, I really felt that the gameplay shone more because it almost felt like you could take a routine activity like, yep, connection to the chiral network, connection to the chiral network. But now Sam in of himself is like wanting, I think, to connect with others.
Yes, but also I think there is a little bit of a sticky issue here because like the way in which Sam gets involved in all of this is that at the very beginning of the game, Fragile comes to him and is like, Sam, I have this call to adventure here. Would you like this call to adventure? And you don't actually get to refuse the call to adventure, even though that's what you're supposed to do.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I wanted to forget about that because you said we were going to do lots of things like this on Outtakes. Anyway, for a preview of Outtakes, it's right here.
Okay.
Anyway,
she comes
I texted my friend immediately who was like, Lauren, there's going to be this many reveals. You're going to really like 2 of them. This one, I think you're going to just like, you're either going to see it coming or you won't, blah, blah, blah. They didn't tell me what they were. They were just like, Lauren, here's reveals. Like, the ending is done a lot better, so I'm excited for the ending because they're like, it's not 50,000 endings. Anyway, yeah, continue. So, yeah, Fragile comes in. Call to adventure that you can't refuse, which I hate. That
you can't refuse, yeah. So then you go to the other side of Mexico to meet up with Dead Man, who was a dead man this time. Dead Man is a dead man. You fight a giant BT head, and then you come back to your shelter somewhere in Mexico, and oh my God, Lou.
Yeah, terrible things happen.
Well,
yeah,
it happens very early. Yeah.
I know it happens really early.
I am going to spoil this. I am going to spoil this because I can't talk about it otherwise. So Lou is dead, or something has happened to Lou, probably dead, and Fragile has been seriously injured because somebody at that point, you don't know who it is, but you eventually find out that it was Higgs, has attacked the shelter. And oh my God, Higgs is the bad guy,
Oh my
the same
God.
bad guy from before. Fuck Higgs. We're not talking about
It's
Higgs.
spoiling
Anyway,
everything for everybody. I'm so sorry. Yes, it happens early in the game, but it's not that early. I apologize. I will
it's
never
pretty
say we
early.
won't spoil it again. I will never
it happens
say...
before you even get to Australia.
Yeah, but like the reveals and everything. I mean, you see it coming. You're not
Well,
wrong. Like,
okay.
if you look at
Well,
the
here's
cast
the thing.
list, yeah.
I have not actually spoiled that much because, like, the thing with Lou has a far bigger reveal at the end of the game that I am not going to spoil. And so this is just the setup.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a reveal, but it's actually the setup for the game. Because now Sam is in this position where, like, he's kind of become delusional. He basically hallucinates a kind of, like, BT bridge baby that he thinks is inside of Lou's canister. And everybody's like, that's kind of weird. And
no, I think that's what I was gonna say is that, like, so we talk about, so once again, Lauren, we have a whole year of talking about narrative and aesthetics, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna do gameplay. We're going off the rails. This is my choo-choo train, man. We should have started. Yeah. We should have ended with vehicles. I think the point, though, here for me is that as much as Nicholas is kind of talking about how kind of like the story's not dealing with like nuance, I think it's actually creating a bunch of topics for us to talk about narratively, which is why I keep coming back
talk
to
about
that
them,
argument.
Okay,
that whenever you introduce something in games, like, they can't always, I hate being like they are not always, say, the most, you could say, well written works, but it's because a lot of the things that people have to say also needs to be mechanical. So the fact that, like, you can't refuse the choice to call to action, which I absolutely did just to see what would happen.
I did,
and then
too.
I got stuck in a cutscene loop. I, like, basically had to quit the game and start over. I actually started the whole game experience over because it didn't properly save. And I was just like, well, here I go. I had to go down the mountain and do all the things, and it's fine. But, like,
I actually really like that opening. Because
I love.
The thing is, because the
that's
opening
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because the opening from the first game is all about sort of like ascending and like going up the mountain to dispose of the body, but then this one is all about coming back down.
And I
so
think
there's a nice kind of bookending.
There's a nice bookending effect. It's a really great intro. I love how Nicholas always talks about how he's like, no, these narrative nuances don't exist. And then suddenly he's like, oh, yes, but then, like, it's a nice bookend. We're coming down the mountain.
But that's the narrative of the gameplay.
It is. It is the narrative of the gameplay. And when I look at the dialogue in the cutscene, in moments where there's mechanics involved, things like you're not able to back out of a choice, things that you, for all intents and purposes, you get to choose a person's voice to narrate your experience, and you don't actually have a choice
that was annoying.
Okay? Like, when there are mechanics involved, Tarman is also describing a mechanic. That, I would say, is expositionary dialogue, right? And it is also dialogue that has to be told to the player. You could say informational is the better word. Declarative is another one. But I would argue that there are moments in the writing where, particularly around Lou, when you have Dollman, I love all the mans, you have Dollman saying, but wait, the container, and then someone's like, shut up. Like, even if there were more moments like that, I don't think we'd have as much of a problem, right? But it's because a lot of the rest of that is a cutscene moment. It's a scene moment. It's very early in the game. It had a rewrite pass. It got re-recorded. Yeah. The rest of the game did not have rewrite passes and did not get re-recorded. And that just happens sometimes. And I hate saying, like, that just happens sometimes. But no, it really truthfully happens, because by the time you see it in the engine, in the editor, you're like, crap, we want to rewrite this, and we can either have them reread the line to us voiceover, or we can have them re-react it in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, motion captured. Like, that's way more expensive. And so I think, like, when I look at these things, and I look at the gameplay and the narrative experience of the gameplay, like, that's why I was like, let's focus there. Because I think that ultimately the qualms I have with the Death Stranding 2's execution is kind of the execution of it, for me at least. It's not necessarily the intent. And the gameplay narrative's execution is really great.
Well, that's the thing. So, like, I know I've been hammering on this, like, distinction between, like, the narrative of gameplay and the narrative of, like, the cutscenes, maybe a little too hard. But the reason why I stick to it is that, like, so if the cutscene, if that whole thing that happens in Mexico establishes that like Sam is coming from a place of grief and depression and having to come to grips with that, that is not in the gameplay narrative. And so this is where, and this is why I tend to harp on the fact that like, no, maybe it's not actually, like, maybe we're giving it too much credit.
Well,
because the thing is, there aren't, because like, for example, in Death Stranding 1, in the entire scene with, in the entire chapter with Mama, you actually experience her, like, her decline and ultimate death through gameplay. You bring her dying person to see her sister one last time before she passes away, after you have severed her connection with, again, interestingly, a kind of like BT bridge baby. And the thing is like, it's kind of telling to me that like Sam is having a very analogous experience. But where's Lochna? Where's Lochna / Mama in this game? They appear a couple of times, but Margaret Qualley has not a single line of dialogue in this game. And so it's like, where is that element where like I actually see the thematic connection between Sam's experience and like the clear visual representation of it that's taken from Mama's experience? Like, that has been severed. Like, that's, or not, it's not, it's
no,
like the connection is not even being
that
met.
You called it severed, because that's just like into the gameplay terminology. It's great. And I think that for me, what's really important here is that I do believe that this is a much better kind of articulated version of the open world experience. I think that was kind of coming from the first game. I think this is a great time. I really wanted to start kind of talking about tone in the gameplay experience.
Okay.
And you really set me up with Mama, because the tone of Mama's entire chapter is about both like recognizing your connection to something that you kind of always have attached to you, the bridge baby. Yeah. And she also has her own bridge baby. And then the eventual separation of you from your bridge baby, right? Yeah. And from her also then separated, but it was to reconnect her with her sister. Yeah. Because she had been separated from her sister because she was attached, connected to the bridge baby. It's what I like to call these moments mirror moments. Now, in the gameplay, when you kind of think about how gameplay feels, I use the word tone. And I use the word tone because tone and mood, arguably you can look them up on the internet and you'll get what a definition of tone, you'll get a definition of mood, right? Mood is like, ooh, so grim dark, right? Yeah. But a tone of grim dark could be cozy. It can be a grim dark universe and you're all, cooking over a campfire and having fun, like a nice homebrew campaign, for example. Or it could be like grim dark and then like, really harsh survivalist. It's the dead of winter. You've got stamina. You've got, a starvation meter and you're cooking. Same activity, right? Different tones. Same mood, same atmosphere, different tones. And when you play Death Stranding 1, I felt the tone was overall one of like isolation. It was a lot more barren. It was a lot more sparse. Everyone was talked about as like they were a prepper, and those preppers are isolated, bring them onto the network, earn their trust, right? And get connection. It was all about learning to trust again. And that was really reinforced. And I think, in Sam's kind of like narrative arc, but really with Mama's, right? Because the tone of Mama's was more about the personal connections we have to the things we include in our lives, and about how we are and how we can survive with those connections that are severed. But ultimately, her kind of descent into darkness, but like descent into death, right? Was ultimately her just having to accept that she was actually already disconnected from the world and was kind of hanging on, you could say, by a strand, by a thread. I really love puns.
It's a metaphor.
I really love puns. I really love metaphors. Nicholas is going to really love reading my script. And I think that when we go into Death Stranding 2, the tone completely shifts for me. It shifts because when the first opening, it feels like the Death Stranding game. I'm getting this, it feels like I'm coming home. It feels Lou is home, and you do have a home, and you've had a home, right? That home is now interrupted by Fragile, but now she's just like your trad wife. Like, she's there with the baby, you're off doing call to adventure, you feel good. It feels good. And Mexico's a great place. Who doesn't want to go to Mexico? Everyone's happy, okay? It's not actually happy, but like I didn't want to do the side missions in Mexico because I wanted to get back home to my trad wife and baby, right?
Well, and the thing is, the game does a really good job of actually inculcating that in you, because I think their version of Instagram, or like whatever the social media thing
the SSS.
is. Yeah. So like the entire time that as you move further and further away, like Fragile keeps sending you updates about how Lou is doing and sending you pictures, and they have cute pictures with love, like, you know, the baby, or of like them together. And it's like, oh, that's great. Like so
it creates the same feeling of nostalgia that you have when you're away from your cats and you're traveling, or when you're away from your partner and they're like, oh, check out the babies. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a 10-minute walk down the street, but I should be home. You know?
Yeah, exactly,
that's been my life, because I have a co-working space that I go to now. And I'm just, you know, to get out. But then I'm like, why did I leave? I should have just been with my cats. But that's what I'm saying, right? It creates those feelings. When you feel like that as a player, and it's through gameplay loops, it's through gameplay systems, that's what I consider the narrative experience of the game. But I also think that lends itself and adds to the tone. And tone is the environment, right? It's the storytelling, it's the UI, it's everything. All of these things are coming together. And the tone of that game was very different, but very needed, I think, after how kind of like dramatic and harsh and long-winded and depressing the last ending of the game was. Then to rip that out in front of you, once again, also a great call to action, because now it's not just the call to action that you're doing because you're like, oh, I guess I'm going to go be a porter again because I have to porter my wares. It's also something where now Sam actually has a call to action. It's not that Sam doesn't want to deal with its grief. It's that we know Sam can't deal with grief. And we know this because in the first game, Sam ran away from his problems. Sam ignored the fact that he had grief from losing his family, realizing he was a repatriate. Sam literally named his baby his own child's name that he would have had if he had gotten there in time, if he had stopped whatever was happening. Even though that was not actually the case at all and Sam had nothing to do with it, he still felt guilty, right?
Yeah.
The same exact story happens again. And this is where I talk about story versus narrative, okay? You are experiencing the narrative and the order in which it's told. It happens again. I bet all of you forgot that happened. Like, I absolutely bet when you're playing Death Stranding 2, you're like, wait, this is just Sam's backstory, but it happened again. And maybe you were really wise and you were like, oh yeah, this is just Sam's backstory happening again so that I can go to Australia. And that's also fine, because now you're apparently an American Westerner, which is great. I love it. And I think that that's the point. You're supposed to be so excited by the tone of hopefulness that when you get hopelessness, you have kind of no choice but to accept. And it's you, the player, also going, oh my gosh, like I have to... Maybe Lou is alive in this thing. Maybe I can see it. Maybe it's only me and I'm the special one because you are special. You're Sam. I was going to say Sam Norman Reedus. That's hilarious. You're Sam Porter Bridges, or just Sam Porter.
Sam Porter Reedus.
You're Sam Porter Reedus, okay? You can do anything. Why not? Right? And I think that that's when I say it creates the tone, it creates the connection. So by the time you actually get to Australia, you're ready to move on. Not because you've moved on from your grief. No, you're carrying your grief with you physically. You're ready to move on from all of this American business, and you want to go into Act 2, which is the open world. And I think then that's where the tone completely breaks down. It's a totally different game. You no longer care about grief. You no longer care about all that happened.
Yeah,
and you're really, really just enjoying the game. It's done. It's over.
Yeah, can we talk about sort of like a repeated pattern now that we've had with at least as far back as Phantom Pain, where it's like...
And how many times has Phantom Pain said in this game? My count is 4.
Oh my God. Can we... No, we're in the Patreon episode, we'll talk about how this game once again relitigates Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. Anyway, but the point is that we back when we talked about the Phantom Pain, we mentioned the fact that like there's this extremely tight, well plotted, well structured like prologue bit that like sets the stakes. It's very clear, and then like once you move into sort of like the vast expanse of the game, it kind of it kind of falls apart. And then that happened again with Death Stranding, and now once again we have this extremely tight like prologue chapter in Mexico that establishes like why we're going to go to Australia in the first place. And then you get to Australia and it's like, okay, here's your open world game. And it's like, and the thing is, I feel like there's so many missed opportunities. It's not just the absence of Mama, especially when like, you know, the outward signs of Sam's grief are so similar, but also like the whole situation with Rainey and her, like, I can't remember what the term they use for it, but like her like time stopped pregnancy.
I think it's chromafall. Oh no, her ability I think is chromafall.
Yeah, but
like it's
anyway,
the opposite of timefall.
Anyway, the point is she is pregnant, but her pregnancy is sort of like stalled at the beginning of the third trimester. And this is something that is happening to other women as well. And you meet a doctor who is like trying to like help women with like their like all the various problems that they're having with their pregnancies as a result of all the chiral bullshit. And the thing is like that's actually a pretty interesting story in and of itself. But then to me, it's like, okay, well, why didn't you then like in some way make the connection back to like what Sam is experiencing? Maybe Sam wants to take on this mission because of the fact that it has to deal with like the ways in which these women are having difficulties with their pregnancies. And it just kind of hangs there. It's just not taken up. That's the problem I often have.
And I think what's really interesting here is that as you know, I've been doing a lot more screenwriting, and I've been working not just on TV, but I've also been working on feature film. And I think the big thing, like in terms of trying to finish some screenplays, and I think what's really interesting here is that when I look at the cast and I look at these narrative structures of the story, and when I say narrative structure of story, what I mean is how you, the audience, if you were just to watch the cutscenes back to back, will experience the story through the cutscene experience, okay? Or the cinematic experience, if you will, not the gameplay, just to be super clear. What Nicholas is talking about is such a great point for me, because when I look at this cast and I look at all of the open-ended strands or threads, it's their threads of like a TV pilot or of a series of episodes that you're waiting for Death Stranding 3 to fully resolve. Because you're introducing a ton of plots, and in an open world game where maybe you're like an MMORPG, for example, you'll do another patch and you'll add those in. You'll do another patch and you'll add those in. You have time to develop and go through all of these different characters. And I do think that's a really strong hallmark of really good open world game design. I think you need that many characters. I think you need to have all those threads.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like Nicholas is pointing out, is that if you're creating a more cinematic, straightforward, linear single-player game, at the end of the day, you can really only focus on your, what I would call hero character or hero cast of characters. Right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why the narrative experiences of games tend to break down in main story quest and do your companion quests, and if you did all of your friendship is magic, and then you're all great with the abilities. Like, there's a reason why there's this kind of almost RPG or JRPG trope to it. But that isn't going to work for Kojima's cinematic style. He doesn't want you to play an RPG. He wants you to have the game design elements all neatly tucked away with little bows and hidden within his cinematic experience. And so I think that's when I talk about how the tone breaks down, is that suddenly I'm in a different world in Australia. And, you know, if Kojima does get to this episode, he'll probably say something like, yes, that is exactly what I intended, because you're in a new world. It's a new continent, which means we need a new tone. And I want to argue with that. I want to argue with the invisible Kojima in my head that doesn't exist, right? And
well, we're speculating a lot here. Yeah.
We're speculating.
So that's part of the problem.
And that's what tone does, right? Is we speculate with tone, right? And I'm bringing it up because it's so important to remember that I told you that I loved the beginning. I am telling you that I loved the middle state that I am in Australia. It's a different tone. And I still like it because the gameplay and the quality of life that I've been given, the sticky gun. And I'm not a huge fan of Dollman being like, snagged it. Wowza. But it's there, you know?
I mean, it's just the cheesy dialogue of a Kojima
It is.
game.
It's the cheesy dialogue of a Kojima game, which in turn is also a part of the solution / problem, is that you didn't have that in Death Stranding 1, but in Death Stranding 2, we see the return of it. We see the return of the Metal Gear Solid combat scenes where you need to destroy everybody in the base. We see the non-lethal bullets, so you can just assault rifle everybody, but we promise that shooting them up in the face is totally fine, and they're definitely only knocked out.
Yeah.
you see brigadiers and brigands and armed survivalists, and I'm like, it's fine. It's just another word for mules, basically, but they're called something different because now we're in Australia, which means we're part of the Commonwealth.
Because now they're wearing red, or they're robots.
Or they're robots, right? Red is now evil. And it's actually, what's really interesting is these feel like quality of life features. Like, I know how many enemies are in a camp. That's a quality of life feature. Yeah. I can tell the Metal Gear Solid alerts are all back. That's a quality of life feature. So I don't feel as threatened. I don't feel as isolated. I don't feel as alone. And I think I'm ending there with my port of tone, because I think that's the point, is that now you are a Sam in a much more connected world, and you're playing in a world where, in the gameplay and the quality of life, means that you have to have more power. You have to have more of that connectiveness tissue that then, I believe in the ending, by my own argument, and I haven't finished it, by the way, would then mean all of that gets ripped out from under me, and so everything's going to feel like a twist and a reveal, and I'm going to be sad Norman Reedus again. That being said, that's kind of how I'm seeing it, and that's kind of why I'm looking at the tone, and I'm looking at the gameplay, is that the gameplay is necessitating something that is more fun, and now the tone in the story the tone of the narrative experience of playing this game is doing it as well. It's a lot more fun running around, doing things for the musician, get my vinyls. I can finally, it's the first Metal Gear game where I can play the music player and I'm not in the helicopter. We finally got this 40 years later. 40 years? Is it 40 years? It's about 30 years. 30 years later, we finally can play that damn music player while we play the game, guys, okay? Like, it's these quality of life features that make things feel so much more special, so much more easy to use, that when you have a story cutscene that's like, by the way, I lost my son in a sea of tar, that it just doesn't hit the same. Because you're like, cool story, bro. I'm going to go listen to Gen Hoshino on my MP3 Walkman, right? Yeah. That's why. So it clashes. But for me, I am unfortunately enjoying all of it. And I only say unfortunately because as a game developer and game designer myself, it's really hard to critique something when you think it's really fun. So I do hope that at least on my portion, Nicholas, I've tried to maintain some level of objectivity here. And then in the outtakes, you guys, once again, come over to Patreon for our behind-the-scenes special outtakes look where Nicholas and Lauren get to riff-raff all over this tiff-taff of a game. Yeah. And you'll get to hear more. That's maybe slightly less objective, Lauren.
If it's okay with you, Lauren, I think I'm going to close things out with just a very brief statement, which is that, you know, we have now... we are now up to the present. This is the most recent Kojima game that has been released. And we're at a point where I, at least, feel I really enjoyed this game, but also, like, the entire time I'm like, do we have to do this again? And I'm a little worried because there were elements of this that felt like regression, like we're going back to things in, like, say, from the Metal Gear Solid games that I thought we had finally moved past. And so as a result, I want to be hopeful for what Kojima has to offer going forward, but I'm also concerned because of the fact that there are two wolves inside of this game, and one of the wolves is a dire wolf companion, and you are the druid, and together you go off on really great fun adventures. The problem is that the other wolf has rabies, and you need to be very careful around it because you just never really know what it's going to do. And so with that, I want to encourage you all to go to patreon.com/Furidashi, where you can sign up for our bonus episodes. This month's bonus episode, as Lauren mentioned, we're going to talk about all kinds of wacky things with regards to this game. But also you can listen to our very, very large, extensive back catalog of bonus episodes. We have been at this for 6 years now, so there is so much there, and it's only $5 a month. Can you imagine a deal better than that? Maybe, but it's a pretty good deal regardless. You can also follow us on Blue Sky. I'm at Academicality. Lauren is at Espresso Cat. If you have any questions, or if you really liked the episode, or if there's something you wanted to shout out, or just like praise what we said, go ahead. If you have something negative to say, maybe put it in a DM so that way we can have like a more thoughtful conversation and not feel bad about it, on main. And so with that, I want to leave you all for this lovely month of August. I hope you're staying well. I hope you're staying safe. And we will see you again next month when we talk about Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker.